Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. Hello and welcome to Reimagining Motion, a podcast from the High Volume Transport Applied Research Program, which is undertaking research into the complex issues around sustainable transport in Africa and South Asia. The HVT program is an £18 million investment by the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, and I'm your host, Holger Dagmann. Welcome to today's show. Welcome to our sixth series that explores infrastructure and transport system development in South Asia and what it needs to look like in the future. The transport sector has long played a crucial role in Asian development, with a particular focus on increasing connectivity in South Asia to address poverty and boost economic growth. The development of transport infrastructures and systems, often focused on road transport, has led to rapid urbanization and growth, but brings its own challenges. Motor vehicle numbers from 2- and 3-wheelers to passenger cars in Asia are doubling every 6 years and becoming a major source of greenhouse gases, air pollution and congestion. At the same time, the region also carries a disproportionate burden of extreme weather events from climate change that has catastrophic impacts on infrastructure and people's lives. So today we have with us Dr. Nazmus Sakib. Dr. Nazmus Sakib works as an associate professor of civil and environmental engineering at the Islamic University of Technology in Ghazipur, Bangladesh. Dr. Sakib earned his PhD as well as his master's from the University of Texas at Austin, USA, specializing in bitumen and pavement engineering. It is his bachelor in civil engineering from Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology. His significant contribution to road safety, particularly for 3-wheeler vehicles, have been instrumental in enhancing the safety and efficiency of urban and rural roads in Bangladesh. One of his notable projects involves developing road design guidelines tailored for these slow-moving vehicles. He's currently working on an HVT-funded project which is part of the innovation fund called TTRID. He's exploring how to improve the safety of slow-moving 3-wheelers vehicles in Bangladesh. In addition to his work on road safety, Dr. Sakib works in the field of climate-resilient infrastructure. He collaborates with esteemed organizations like the World Bank and governmental organizations in Bangladesh, such as the local government engineering department and roads and highways department, to design and construct roads that can endure extreme weather conditions. His expertise in this area is paving the way for a more sustainable and resilient future in transportation. So, welcome, Nazmus. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Holger. How are you doing?
Very well. Thanks for joining us today. Let's dive immediately into some of the challenges I already used to describe. You live, in fact, and work particularly in Bangladesh, Dhaka, and Bangladesh has seen, as many countries in Southeast Asia have seen, a substantial urbanization and population growth in recent years. So Dhaka currently has more than 15 million or more, you will tell us, and its experience really is a significant challenges in terms of its congestion, air pollutions. Give us this like a little bit of big picture in terms of how is it like to live in Bangladesh, and you as an expert, so what are the key challenges for the transport infrastructure?
And thank you. So Bangladesh is a very small country with a very high population, and you would expect that it has some uniformity, but that's very unusual that we do not have a very uniform city structure. What we have, a very centralized city, which is Dhaka, in extremely popular. It can go along with any major city you name in the whole world. But when you go outside Dhaka, maybe without a couple of cities, it's mainly rural population. It's suburban, without not much traffic, few cars, very rarely buses. So actually, I believe maybe only 2 or 3 cities in Bangladesh has bus service because the roads are small, there's no demand. So except for Dhaka and Chattogram, which is another major city, the other areas does not see as much traffic congestion, but the road conditions everywhere is not satisfactory. So there are two aspects of this network. One is the ride quality or comfort, and another is the congestion. So congestion is yet to be pervasive everywhere, but road conditions need to be improved in most of the places.
Thanks for highlighting the challenges, but also to differentiate when it comes to Dhaka between this as a rural, peri-urban situation versus like the central situation. What are the opportunities and factors from the planning perspective? I can envisage also that this must be a major challenge where there's constantly some more people actually coming to Dhaka. Tell us a little bit more about the challenges, but also is in fact also the planning authority also keeping up with that development? How do they do that?
Planning or lack of it actually what caused this situation, because considering it's a very small country, it doesn't have to be a very centralized location. So what the weakness of planning did that everything is being put in Dhaka. So all the good universities, schools, government officials are centralized in Dhaka. And that's actually caused this problem that massive urbanization, high population incoming, all these problems. So now, easy way out is to move these government officials out of Dhaka. That's one of the major political discussion, but nobody ties the knot to the cat, So that's one of the major things. But other than that, as far as transportation planning ongoing, there are some major steps being taken. So there are some strategic action plan, transportation plan for 20-30 years that's being uptaken. For example, recently they have made a metro rail in Dhaka, so which is very effective, very convenient for many people. But this metro rail should have been implemented 20 years back. That's we are planning something we want to implement, but now it's so densely populated, it's difficult to implement any transportation project because transportation projects need space and time. Both are being very difficult to manage in a highly dense city. So that's the challenge ongoing. We have some road networks. We have some elevated expressways, bypasses, even tunnels, tunnel-based metro. All these are being implemented right now. And I would say there are a lot of things going that will ease the problems with the high traffic. But all these are public transportation. So that's another good thing. So I would say there are a lot of things going on in positive direction, but we are concerned, is it too late?
Thanks, Nazmus, for sharing us those insights. In fact, in preparation for the podcast today, I read also one of your excellent articles, and we provide also the link also in the additional notes also to the podcast. And here is the highlight the importance of institutional coordination. Tell us a little bit more. What's the situation currently also in Bangladesh? Is there collaboration? Is there also one entity like we see in places like Lagos or so former so in London with Transport for London? Is there something similar existing in Bangladesh?
There are some overreaching authorities. So essentially, in case of Dhaka, we have a DTC, a Dhaka Transport Coordination Authority, who are supposed to coordinate this kind of bus network, rail network, urban transportation. So they have this kind of overreaching authority on this. But there is also city corporation, there is also this metro rail services. So it doesn't have as much power to connect, and it's a very new organization. So the problems are actually coming from 20 years back when this kind of development was ongoing. But DTC is trying to manage this kind of organization and coordination to some extent, so that if you come to an airport and you want to go to a railway station, there right now they started a bus service, circular bus service, who will pull people from the airport and drop them off in the railway and the vice versa. So this is a very honestly speaking, this is a very traditional way of multimodal transportation. It's being practiced everywhere in modern countries, but in Bangladesh, this kind of connections has not been established before. But I believe DTCA and some other agencies like city corporations are working together to improve this kind of coordinated effort for connectivity.
Thank you. Let's move now closer to your research. And as we already mentioned in the beginning, Bangladesh is really dominated, in fact, by the use of two, in particular, of three-wheelers. In your own research, you said it's almost makes up 80% of the traffic in some of the cities in Bangladesh. And at the same time, there is an electric revolution, because often people think, okay, this is all about the electric car, but actually it's about two, and it's about three-wheelers. So we've seen a rise of about 1 million recently, and with probably 4 million, is that correct, is on the roads of Bangladesh right now. What solutions are they actually offering to people, and what are the opportunities to integrate this and the electric revolution, and what are the challenges?
It's a very good question, in the sense this actually gives us the niche where this rickshaw or three-wheelers fit in and how it's been traditionally been operated. As you mentioned, in case of Bangladesh, when I think about Bangladesh, I think two terms. One is resilience and adaptation. We have been fortunate for people who are very resilient and they adapt very quickly. And they needed to adapt because of our location. So that's not a lucky part, but still we do it. So when the electric vehicles, motors, battery technology become easier to implement, they adopt it very quickly. It's not a technologically sophisticated thing. It doesn't need very sophisticated technology. You need a motor and a battery. That should be it. So this local-led initiative, they said, okay, let's do it. And they uptaken it very quickly because it showed you didn't need to invest a lot. So it ticked all the right boxes. So when you think about a Tesla or any kind of electric vehicle, their clientele is upper or middle income people because they have this automated technology, self-driving and those kind of things, but we do not need that. So where does it fit in? The fitting part is very localized and geography dominated because our road networks are not proper two-lane roads. It's essentially one lane or not a good quality roads. Sometimes they have to drive on like muddy roads or roads full of potholes. So if you get a car or this kind of vehicles, they are not as robust as these rickshaws. Also, you have to consider the fact we have very frequent flooding in Bangladesh. It comes from sometimes riverine, sometimes waterlogging due to rainfall. So the vehicles, which is a very low clearance in under their tires, versus a three-wheeler, which is like 1.5 feet above the ground. So people adopted this kind of vehicles traditionally. And third part is it was human powered. So we had a lot of people who can work on this on this sector. It's easy employment, does not need much training. So these three factors. One is the human resource that we have available. Second is our geography. Third is the availability of roads or other accessible network. So all these things come together to make these three-wheelers very popular. Now, the next question is, where does it fit in the transportation network? These rickshaws or three-wheelers actually does the trips in about 5 kilometers or less in an average. So our cities, in fact, are very smaller compared to many other urban centers across the world, which is very spread out in general. In case of Bangladesh, you can go across Dhaka in probably 20 to 30 minutes if you are not being stuck in traffic. So it's not a big city as far as the length and width are concerned. So when people goes to work or come to school, they usually prefer this kind of modality where they do not need to wait for public transportation. So it's a very easy taxi service. Second part is sometimes people do use buses or other public transport but they do not put you in front of your home. So the last mile transport is also very critical for people to adopt this public transportation. So they use these three-wheelers actually for connecting with the transportation hub to their home. So this is the actual niche that they are filling out right now.
Thanks for sharing and highlighting the importance of three-wheelers in the context or as a form of employment. And we'll come back also to workers' conditions also in a minute. But let me also get first on the question of the role of electric vehicles in also the road design and infrastructure and also the policy. So recently also the transport minister actually had tried to enforce a ban on three-wheelers. And with also your HVT funded project, you looked into the situation also of passengers. So describe a little bit what happened in Dhaka in Bangladesh with this decision and your perspective and research, how actually it can actually improve the situation rather than make it worse.
When the transportation union declared about this ban, I was very intrigued for the fact that who is going to replace them? That's the biggest question. There are safety issues, there are concerns. I understand and I somewhat agrees to some points. But what is going to replace this fact? Who are going to provide the transportation from home to school, maybe 10 blocks ahead of you? So how are you going to get these children to the school if you don't have this rickshaw? Who is going to transport you? In summer, you cannot walk 2 miles in Bangladesh because we are hitting temperatures like 45 degrees Celsius. So, and it's quite a long summer. So, how can you expect women, children, or men or any other people? It's very difficult to do this kind of things if there is no rickshaw. So, when I thought about it, I thought this is not going to be a robust solution banning them because there is no replacement. And aside from the fact what these people are going to work with, because we are creating a lot of unemployment, where are we going to put these people in? So looking at these two factors, I observed and I anticipated this ban is not going to last. So sometimes it's not good, but because it's not a better solution, there is no better solution, you let it stay. Now, is there a better alternative? I don't feel so. Because when you think about this last mile transportation and children going to school, what are you going to use in the advanced countries? They usually use bikes or sometimes school buses, right? So this is the common trend across the world. But in case of Bangladesh, our roads, either I can use bicycle, which is not a culturally common. Also, the women and children are not comfortable driving the roads with this kind of cycles. So we actually do need them for this easy taxi. There is also, it's not that we are not replacing the buses or trains using rickshaw. They are a different modality. We are connecting the rickshaws to this transportation sector. So actually they are complementary. So considering these facts, there is no better alternative than rickshaw in this climate. But we definitely feel that the designs needs to be improved, safety needs to be improved, because there's a very big lapse of safety practice and driving practices in this kind of vehicles.
So picking up, in fact, on the safety issue, and that was one of the main reasons for the initial ban, and the Prime Minister also called for making also rickshaws more safe. So what does your researchers tell us? Where is the highest risk and where are areas to improve versus the safety?
One is traditional kind of accidents. One is very new kind of accidents happening with this kind of three-wheelers. The traditional accidents was because they are slow-moving vehicles. When they go into the faster-moving lanes like highways, they risk a lot of accidents, not only for themselves, but also for other vehicles. So I completely agree on banning the rickshaws from the highways where there are vehicles speeding up to 60 miles per hour, right? So we cannot allow this kind of vehicles, slow-moving vehicles in the highways. That's a big no. But for urban conditions, we are seeing a new kind of accidents, whereas these rickshaws has been designed for pedal driven. It has a speed like a bike, which is like 15, 20 to 25 kilometers per hour. But with the power that they have from the motors, now they're driving up to 45. So the brakes, tires, stability does not work in this kind of speed. So this high speed is actually causing these major accidents, which does not involve collision with faster vehicles. They're creating the accidents themselves. So what we do need to, one is we need to figure out how can improve the road network. Second is we definitely need to improve this speed control mechanism within these vehicles. We cannot allow a local three-wheeler to run as fast as a car. That's not a solution that we can adopt.
Another element I'd like to move forward to is in fact, you said it provides a lot of employment. And tell us a little bit about the working conditions and how the business actually works. Are these individuals who owners of that? Are there associations? Because we have seen and heard a lot about the sector of paratransit, or sometimes called as informal or popular transport, that the working conditions are bad. Drivers are not really paid well, has unusual working hours, and so on. So what's the situation in Bangladesh?
It's not great, but as far as the money goes, but they are not, I would not say abused or mistreated by any means. Because what they usually do, sometimes they own these three-wheelers. That's one thing. But people who do not own it, they actually hire it from a owner, right? And the owner actually splits the working hours in 8 hours. This is pretty standard. But the problem is it doesn't pay well. It's a structural problem because it's not, you cannot get rich with it, obviously. But it puts food in your mouth. So I think people are making it work, because it's also true that there are not actually other skills that they can impart to. So this is a high employment situation because we have in many cases, they have a low skill labor. Sometimes they get a better work condition and they move out. There is no obligations to work in these sectors. So I would say it's a market economy at this point, and fair as far as Bangladeshi income context goes for that population.
Thanks, Nazmus. Let's move to the next element. And you already mentioned the issues of road design. So apparently, as the roads in Bangladesh were not built or planned for, so having these three-wheelers in mind. What needs to actually change in terms of the designers to accommodate those vehicles?
First of all, we have a tendency as road designers to prioritize the cars, because we have been privileged in most cases where the designers have been from a privileged background. We usually use a car and we thought that's the primary mode. But the problem is we do not prioritize rickshaws as much, which is not a difficult thing to do. Actually, as a designer, when you think about how this rickshaw is going to work, for example, when you are driving over let's say, a bridge, a car can climb up pretty rapidly. But when you think about a pulled rickshaw or this kind of vehicle, you need a much milder ramp. So this is not a very technical aspect, it's a very common sense aspect. But the thing is, we are not pressured or feel the pressure to design the road for their comfort. So the main objective or main takeaway from our research was, let's think about how rickshaws are going to use this road. And you can solve the problem by yourself. It's not a very high-end, sophisticated road concept. It's a very simple concept. Let's make it easier for those people. For example, if you brake in an uphill, if you're climbing up and you need to stop somewhere in an uphill location, then you will have to pedal up and being very slow to cross that intersection. But if you can cross that uphill in one single motion, a continuous motion, you can make a much faster movement. So this kind of considerations needs to be done by designers when they're designing this alignment. So my advice or recommendation in that guide was, apart from the specific, when you're designing out, let's consider these three-wheelers because these are the people who are going to use it. They are not an afterthought, they are the primary thought. That's what we're recommending as a fact.
Thanks for sharing these examples, and really would like to highlight the work you have done, funded also by the High Volume Transport Program, where you created a guidance for the design, which again also we will add to the notice of the podcast for those who are interesting, and I strongly recommend us to look at them. One of the other elements when it comes to climate change is in fact the impact, and we unfortunately have seen many pictures from Bangladesh over the last years, particularly when it comes to torrential rain and impact of flooding. What kind of role adaptation plays when doing this design here?
So actually flooding and urban flooding is a major concern right now, because we are seeing torrential rains very recently. I've been born and brought up in Bangladesh, but I would say the temperature and the rainfall is increasing dramatically. And obviously this is for climate change, but our roads at this point, we are just making it higher and higher, but we definitely need to change the modality a little bit. I recently wrote a proposal to some agencies about a Uber concept for this water-based transport, right? So this kind of situations, right now it's raining outside and I can see the roads are starting to flood. So these rickshaws who does not rely on very low clearance road, you can always adopt a rickshaws or this kind of vehicle for this kind of climatic situation. And that's what the appeal of these vehicles to actually common people who they are very resilient for this climate effect. They are very comfortable in sense of social safety and personal safety for women and children. They are also a huge driver of economy. So these are the considerations that need to make before any kind of ban or any thinking of banning this kind of vehicles.
One of the other projects HET had funded is the revision of the Road Note 31. So questions of design of roads, particularly in low middle income countries. You were also involved in the work when it comes to the adaptation in Bangladesh. How you value such international guidance and how practical that is also for a situation you just described?
First of all, I would like to thank the team behind the Road Note 31, because what they tried to do is a very necessary document. But as any guidelines, this has not been field tested. These are very early stage of this guideline. So what we need to do in our part of the world is to implement this design and see how it goes, because there are very good suggestions in those guidelines. There are very good background or studies that support those observations. But in case of Bangladesh in particular, we have very soft soil. We are lucky in climate. We have very soft soil. We have very weak flooding. We have very high rainfall, high temperature. So it's a God-gifted experimental situation. So we can only implement and see how it works. And what RN31 did is showed the promise of probably the only guideline that considers the LMIC's need a very specific light. And I would appreciate for that, but they are still early. When the RN31 team visited Bangladesh, I actually talked with them and we discussed that how we can improve it, or what should be the experimental trials of RN31 that we can do in Bangladesh. So this kind of adaptations need to be done for those guidelines.
Thanks. And to highlight, in fact, we had a podcast with Eduardo from the Transport Research Laboratory, in fact, in one of our former series. So again, Ursa will share us the link to those who are interested to learn more about Ursa, the work there, and the challenges, particularly when it comes to resilience and adaptation. Now, so as we talked earlier briefly about Ursa's electric revolution and really the uptake in Bangladesh, tell us a little bit more about the role of the electrification and how it comes along in Dhaka and other places. And what are the challenges to further uptake?
We have many things going in the right way in Bangladesh right now. So in last probably 10, 15 years, we have done through a lot of electrification, electric supply, and generation work in Bangladesh, because a couple of decades back, we do not have this kind of electricity availability. We had load sheddings and very frequent load shedding at that. So when we had this kind of supply of electricity, people was encouraged to use it in many cases. So not only for electric vehicles, actually the purchase of electric goods actually improved in probably tenfold in recent years. So as is a logical fact, we have now capacity to do smaller, not sophisticated electrical technology adaptation in Bangladesh itself. For example, these three-wheelers. What happened in Bangladesh, our summers is getting hotter and hotter per year. So the rickshaw pullers are feeling that pressure and they are not comfortable. It's not an easy job by any means, but it becomes very difficult for them to pull those rickshaws by manual labor themselves. So they actually, I don't know who did it first, but they actually adopted this very commonsensical technology. Use a motor, let it drive these rickshaws. Because this technology was adopted from tractor technology. In Bangladesh, the tractors has been historically used to pull goods like a trailer. Because tractor has a motor and the motor can be connected to any kind of driving wheel. And that technology actually went downstream and made this miniature version of this motor with connecting the battery with the driving wheel. So once people saw this is easy to do, this doesn't cost a lot of investment, they uptaken it very quickly. But what happened in the meantime, because there's no regulations, essentially these rickshaws are not recognized as a formal vehicle in Bangladesh. So everybody did it differently. During this course of the project, I will probably see about 15 types of geometry in this kind of rickshaws. So it's very localized. So in each of them has their weaknesses, stability issues, braking issues. Some of them are very nice. So that creates a problem for a common platform and approved design in Bangladesh. And we are probably a bit late to adopt that. But we can once we get a better design, we get some support from the government, probably it will be adopted very quickly as well.
We talked a lot about policy and the role of policy on different issues. There's a farmers, there's a design standards, there's to the roads design to, and back to question of is that a legal vehicle? So can you summarize from your experience and your research, what are the key policy challenges and what do you think the government actually needs to do in these fields?
First, the policymakers need to recognize these vehicles are not undesirables. They are filling a very necessary transportation gap. The last mile transportation and women and children friendly transportation. So first, that is the first step. And once you recognize it, once you make them register or formalize, then it's easier to control. Second is, the sum of the part has to be done through management. For example, in Dhaka, there is too much rickshaws, too much three-wheelers going around, and we have a tendency to blame those people for the traffic congestion. Partially it's true, but it's also true that there's a lot of people in Bangladesh, they need it. So they're feeling a demand. They are not the creator of the demand, they're actually servicing that demand. So without supporting the policy level with urban transportation, public transportation, these vehicles are going to be there, this format or other format. If you put all those people in bicycles, which some people love as the most sustainable modality, they are also going to create a huge traffic jam. So it's not the vehicle that's the problem. It's actually the amount of people using them that's creating the problem of the traffic. So government needs to address that main cause without removing the option. So I would say government should accept, acknowledge, and invest in parallel modes.
That sounds almost like a very good closing remark in terms of also the need also for government to acknowledge the role of and the important role of three-wheelers, but at the same time to provide also better enabling also conditions and standards and guidelines as we also discussed. So thank you very much, but I'd like to give you the opportunity to share any final thoughts with our listeners.
I would want to say to the listeners that Bangladesh has been unfortunate in many other climatic situations, but it's been fortunate with people who can adapt very rapidly. So I have talked to these three-wheeler drivers. They are ready to adapt new technology. They are ready to make their life better by themselves. But we need to provide them the tools from the policy, from the NGOs, from the investors. So what we need right now is a properly designed three-wheeler vehicle, electric three-wheeler vehicle that can serve the people. So it's a call of action for the government and the policymakers as well as the donors that we have the people who are ready for this kind of adoption, but there's a void that's not being filled right now in the case of research and investment. I have seen some industry that's going on. For example, I know an industry is working to use solar power to charge those batteries. So it's a second level of sustainability that's being imparted. So people are doing that, but government and the authorities as well as the international donor agencies needs to invest heavily on these sectors. And I believe then we can have a sustainable transportation for a very small country like Bangladesh. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you would like to learn more about the work of our guests or check out any of the resources mentioned, they are all linked in the episode description. I also encourage you to check out the other episodes in this series and leave us a rating, as it really helps people find our work. And finally, you can learn more about the work of HVT at our website, transport-links.com, or follow us on LinkedIn at High Volume Transport Applied Research. The HVT program is an £18 million investment by the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO. HVT is providing a new body of research to help inform the decisions of policymakers and planners and make road and rail transport greener, safer, and more accessible, affordable, and inclusive. My name is Holger Dogman, and you have been listening to Reimagining Motion. Goodbye and auf Wiedersehen.